News Radio 700 WLW.
So we have a lot of unfilled jobs in this country. In fact, they say for every unfilled job in this country, they say there are two people, I should say, for every unfilled job in this country. I think there's over 11 million jobs that are unfilled right now. There's two jobs for every available employee was probably the way I should have said it. But what do I know? I don't do this for a living. But anyway, a lot of people are quietly quitting their jobs, knowing that there is a large marketplace out there. Meanwhile, set that against the backdrop of inflation, and set that against the backdrop of interest rates, and then you see that maybe the consumer confidence in this economy is not as high as it should be. And that is causing companies to reevaluate exactly what they are doing. And when they start doing that, you know what comes next. Yeah. Surveys just out. PwC did a survey, polled 700 executives and board members across the U.S., and found 52% of companies have already enacted hiring freezes. 4 out of 10 have rescinded job offers or cut signing bonuses for new hires. And roughly half have started laying people off or are preparing to cut the headcount. All of this up against quiet quitting, people trying to leave their jobs on their own. What's going on here in the marketplace? Standing by is somebody who watches this and watches it with a keen eye. She is Dr. Jayne Gardner. Now, Dr. Gardner is a business strategist specializing in creating efficient, effective teams that work well together and achieve goals instead of wasting time with petty stuff. Dr. Gardner, how are you on this glorious day?
I am well, thank you. Exciting times, big turn of events here.
There are, and that's why I say it's a little confusing. There are 2 jobs for every available candidate, it seems. We have quiet quitting going on, employees just basically pulling back and not giving their all on the job, and eventually maybe just quitting altogether. And we have companies, at least half according to this survey, that are companies that are contemplating laying people off. There are so many conflicting messages here. Which one should we listen to?
Let's be conservative, quiet quitters. I don't think you have any leverage anymore. I think COVID's over. Yeah, you can work anywhere, but you got to work. I do think it's you got to wake up. But I'll tell you what's hard about this is it's so sudden. It's hard to even get a grasp on the shift. I mean, this is really a big turn of tide, and I sympathize for the quiet quitters. It's going to be hard for them to even grasp that they really have to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, they're calling it quiet quitters now. In my time, they called them slackers. And before that, they called it mailing it in, right? I mean, it depends on where you're from, but it's I've worked with people that basically show up. They're there they're along for the ride. They put their 8 hours in and they leave. And there were others who just put their nose to the grindstone and say, you know what, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to get this done. But I do sympathize in some way, Doctor, with quiet quitters in this sense. Not all companies value their employees the way they should, and just when you think you're giving it your 150%, well, what do you know? The company is sold, or you get a new manager, and you got to start it all over again. And I suppose it depends on your outlook on these things and what you want to do with your life from a career standpoint. But the bottom line is, I don't think there's any wrong or right answer for quiet quitters, except when it's put against current events. And as you say, in these current times, let's not be quite so quiet, and let's not be quite so quitting, correct?
I think you got to protect yourself. But, I'm like you. I do sympathize with these people because it's not just slackers. A single mom out there with 3 kids being asked to work 50 hours a week with a company does get the feeling it's not acceptable. So I get where they're coming from, but I do have a couple of tips for them for right now.
Please.
Yeah, let's look right now. You got to be indispensable. Let me give you 3 things. First, be indispensable to save your job. Just be careful right now, because it may be that there's still 2 applicants for every job. I think it may be turning, though. So first of all, be indispensable to your boss. Second of all, a good question to ask your boss anytime is, what could I do to be a better employee? And you got to play the game right now. So ask that question, listen. And then the third thing you could ask your boss is, what can I do to make your job easier? Now, you may feel like you're giving in here to your point of, I can't work 60 hours a week, but you're starting a discussion about it with your boss. You got to start speaking up. A quiet quitter is a very passive way to deal with a problem. Let's shift into saying what you really mean is, I'm overcome right now. I feel like you don't value me. What could we do here that would be a win for both of us?
Mm-hmm. And in essence, open that dialogue. Well, that does one of 2 things. One, it establishes yourself as someone who's interested in staying there, and it also, and I hate to say this, I worked my entire career in a communications business. Most of the managers I ran into were not great communicators. They were either overwhelmed with the job they needed to do, or they just were people that weren't a good fit for what their job was. And so if you take the initiative on yourself to open that line of communication, it almost forces the issue, which I think sometimes you have to do, right?
That's right. But, this also brings up the case of, what should the employer do? Because this is a 2-way street. We can't really, like you said, it's not their fault either. Let's not blame. Let's just look at, what could an employer do to make their people feel valued? Because right now, that Great Resignation was a big message saying, I don't feel like I want to do this. I don't feel engaged. I don't feel like you care about me.
Right.
So I do think there's some stuff the employer, the CEO, needs to look at.
Well, and CEOs, and this is a broad stroke. It's not necessarily based in anything but anecdotal evidence. CEOs, by and large, are older, and so they came through a system that was different. The people that we're talking about that are the quiet quitters and want to, have this dialogue, they don't necessarily want the same kind of lifestyle that CEO want, regardless of what he or she might have achieved financially or in status. They want something that fits their lifestyle. And I sense more and more that, and I don't even know what generation we're in right now. I think we've run out of alphabet numbers, but whatever generation we're in right now that are the younger workers, they're not so much interested in a career, they're interested in a job. And that job needs to fit their lifestyle. And I think that's what the CEO has got to get, or the middle manager has got to get. Look, the game changed, and this is where we are. You either play the game or you get out of the game. And I think that's where we are right now with a lot of this.
I agree totally. And, there's a deeper issue here with these millennials and the younger people. I think they want to make a difference. I think they want to be a part of something bigger. And those older guys you're talking about that are leading are still thinking, give them a job, they do it, and that's it. I work with so many CEOs. I've got a beautiful story to tell CEO people right now.
Can you tell us?
Yeah. I just watch these people, and here's a success story.
Yeah.
And I heard it from the employee, the millennial kid out there. And they said to me, I took a job in sales. I was totally inexperienced. I did really well for a year. The CEO offered me a big possibility to sell this company they had been playing with for a while, and it was a big stretch for me to try to close that deal. I failed. And she said, I got a call from the CEO that day that said, I want to have lunch with you tomorrow. She said, I thought I was fired. But in lunch, what the CEO said to her was, listen, I want to own part of this. I let you hang out there, and I pushed you into something you weren't ready for. Let's talk about how we can make this be different now. I can do something different, and you can do something different. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I still know that person. She's been working for him for 4 years. She's a loyal, engaged person out of that one thing.
Wow. Yeah. Well, sometimes that's all it takes. That's all it takes. Dr. Gardner, though, what of these companies gearing up for layoffs? We've seen it a lot more than maybe we wanted to see with the tech industry. Apple just laid off, I think, 100 people last week, and then amazingly they had some sort of security breach the next day. But do you sense that the survey is right, that layoffs are coming, and it's all tied to where we are with this economy right now?
I think it's inevitable. I do, and therefore prepare. I think that's my biggest message to everybody, the employer and the employee. Prepare for change. Start getting more involved and getting your employees engaged and hold them accountable. I think that's one thing that the younger generations are teaching us is you got to tell me what you got to do, and you got to go back the next day and say, did you do it? And the next day and the next. You got to have a manager that follows them and says, this is what I want out of you, and this exactly is how I'm measuring success. Yeah. And accountability, setting up a really transparent culture that says the managers, they know to tell their employees what they should be doing right now openly. Everybody knows. And it's brought to everyone's attention when someone slacks. Sure. But don't make it a secret. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I just sense that this ratio, 2 jobs for every candidate, I think you alluded to this just a couple of minutes ago. I think that's changing. And I think whenever the next survey comes out about that, we will find, because of what's going on now with layoffs and what's going on now with the economy, it's probably that's a ratio that's going to change. I just think anybody that's playing off that number is playing off bad information right now. No matter what the future, quiet quitting isn't a good strategy.
I agree. You're either here and you're given 100%, or if you don't like it, go someplace else. And I think that's been a basic precept of any business, and it kind of got out of whack there for a while. But I don't think it's and truthfully, Doctor, just think of this. I mean, we have a finite number of years on this earth, right? Mm-hmm. Do you really want to spend any significant time doing anything half-assed? Don't you want to do something 100%? As opposed to just wasting your time and somebody else's?
It is 1/3 of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree.
And looking at on down the line, use those days, enjoy them. And if you're not doing something that brings you enthusiasm and energy, if you don't want to get up and go to work every day, you're in the wrong profession or maybe the wrong job responsibility. But talk to somebody about it. Look at other answers instead of just sitting there in a passive role of not doing anything.
I agree. And, the root of any solution begins with communication. It does. Dr. Jayne, how can people find you? Because, number one, if there's somebody listening to this that runs a company, big, small, or otherwise, I'm sure they would like to hear your expertise. And if there's an employee that's saying, well, wait a minute, she doesn't understand exactly what's going on in my life, how can people find you?
Thanks for asking. And I have so many articles on my website about this, how to become an engaged employee. And I have one that's 53 ways to be happier at work. So look me up. I'm on drjaynegardner.com, DRJAYNE Gardner.com.
drjaynegardner.com. Good stuff. Might have saved a few careers and businesses here in the last few minutes. Thank you so much for your time. Stay well. We'll talk down the road. I know we will.
I know. But that's what we're both about. Good to be here.